Welcome to this week's episode of Hired. I am super excited, a little starstruck, to be honest with you, of my guest this week in Jay Furlano. I actually know Jay from a northern suburb of Toronto known as Barrie, where we both grew up and are proud alumni of St. Peter's Secondary School. Jay's been in the media space his entire career, is currently the SVP of commercial at MIQ, which is a global company that represents the world's leading brands and media agencies in the ad tech space. We're here today to talk about that, the entire growth of the ad tech space, why it's growing, why it's exploding, and why it's so difficult to identify top talent in that space. And there's nobody better than Jay to talk about it. But before I bring him out, what I like to do is a little game I like to call Two Truths and a Lie. So a lot of people know about Jay's accolades from a business perspective if you're tuning into this or watching the recording afterwards. But I'm lucky that I actually have history. So I know some fun facts about Jay. So I'm going to give you 3 fun facts. 2 of them are true. 1 of them is a lie. And then when Jay comes on, he can tell us which one's a lie. So fact number 1, Jay holds an amateur boxing record of 1 win, 0 losses. True or false? Second fact. One time, Jay was the recipient of a $5,000 reward from a scratch ticket. That's fact number 2. Fact number 3 is his favorite holiday is Halloween. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jay Furlano, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate you. That was fun to listen to.
So what is it? What's the lie?
Yeah, I would love to say that my starstruck record of 1-0 was the lie, but I hung up the boxing gloves after that fight, so that was the truth. The lie is that I've never been fortunate enough to win any money the easy way. It's all come the difficult way. So that is the lie, the lottery scratch ticket there, bud.
No scratch ticket winnings, but you're winning at life, and we're here to chat about it. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This is great.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
So before we jump into it, I feel like for some context, I mean, you've spent your entire career in the ad tech media space. Just in terms of how and why did you get into this industry, and what kept you there over the years?
Yeah, it's a great question. The how and why I got in is a little underwhelming, I think. I did a graduate program at U of T. I didn't know what to do with my life afterwards since it was a BA. I decided I would get into a media communications program at Humber College. It was a 1-year post-grad program. And I had some friends that were working in the industry, and media sounded like it was a lot of fun. I had some friends that worked at TSN specifically. So I decided I was going to get into that because I didn't have any other options with the programs that I went to. So the way I got in, not so glamorous, but what's kept me, I think, is probably the epitome of why I wake up every morning and I get excited about my job. It's the changing landscape of the media industry here in Canada specifically, and the flexibility that we as a country have when it comes to media activation. So when I started way back when, about 15 years ago, Google and Facebook actually didn't even have offices here in Canada. Everyone was buying television. 95% of media budgets were in TV, a lot in newspaper and print, which I can still plan and execute if anyone's wondering. But fast forward 15 years later, and you've got dozens, if not hundreds, of media organizations who operate here locally in Canada. Cool data partnerships that we've got. The tech industry itself is just changing all the time. And I think that that's what's kept me here, is this appetite to continue to learn and evolve in my career and watch those who are learning and evolving with me.
I love that. And we've talked about it so much in terms of how the change of kind of media, and even just how organizations are trying to reach customers has changed so much. I mean, companies, are clinging on to their data now, seeing that as a core differentiator for them in terms of what they know about their customers. But that's just the beginning of what you guys do. Is once you know about your customers, it's just the start. Now it's about where are they? What messages do you craft? How do you get to them? Can you explain how that all works and how it works in the context of what you do at MIQ?
Sure. Yeah. That's a heavy question, Mike. And I think there are several several ways to address it. What we're seeing right now is at the forefront of our industry is that demand for brands specifically to own a lot of their own data, own those conversations with clients. And this has caused a bit of an evolution. Like you don't have to be an avid stock broker to understand and see what's happening within the social sphere. Specifically, Snapchat was down 44 points yesterday, and what we're actually seeing is this need for a little bit more of an authentic conversation to occur between a brand and their consumers. So this need for ownership is evolving the way that media is transacted and executed. So no longer is it simply just executing within the walled gardens that are Facebook, Amazon, Google, those big organizations. They want to be having these omni-channel conversations across a multitude of platforms. So whether it's out of home, which you can now buy programmatically, television, which is behind me, and you can buy programmatically. It's not simply just an ad on a laptop anymore. And I think through the ownership of data and being smarter in the way that they communicate with their consumers, that's what brands are kind of evolving towards at this point. And I think that the future is actually just kind of getting started. TV, the big screen, where I started my career, is really where things are evolving to. And as a result of that, it's really flipping the industry itself on its head. If you look at the announcement by Disney, I believe last week or the week before, they're moving towards an ad-supported model for Disney Plus, and this has yet to arrive here in Canada. But when it does, it's going to create a tectonic and monumental shift in the way that all media is transacted. And I think that those are the things that brands themselves are trying to get ahead of and say, all right, if I can understand, a family that is at home watching a Disney Plus episode, how do I have that one-to-one communication if I'm a client like P&G or something like that?
That's it's cool. I mean, and I know Netflix made news as well, where they're going to start putting ads into so you're seeing the streaming world kind of change and monetize from an ad perspective. And, I think what you're saying is from an ad tech perspective, it's confusing out there for companies. It's like, before it was like, okay, we have traditional media outlets. That's what we do. That's how we reach our customers. And now it's so complicated. There are so many channels. Consumers are consuming content across multiple different things. And what you guys do is help them really kind of make sense of where they should be, when they should be, depending on who they want to reach. Is that kind of accurate?
That's very accurate. There's an old adage in the media industry, Mike, that goes, right consumer at the right moment in the right place. And that's the mindset in which you want to target them with an ad. We've evolved from that part of the conversation, but fragmentation is really the name of the game right now. And I think that further fragmentation is going to happen and occur in our industry. And at MIQ specifically, that's what we're experts in, is providing our partners with meaningful insights, not only to help them understand more about their consumers and sometimes brands to understand more about themselves, but then how do you activate and execute on that in a very meaningful way? Because meaningful executions and meaningful media is something that is so important right now. I heard a stat the other day, and I couldn't believe it, that the average Canadian is exposed to over 5,000 advertisements over the course of a single day. So whether they are aware of it or not, you're being exposed to over 5,000 ads. And it needs to take that one ad to trigger, hey, I remember I needed those Nike shoes, or maybe a vacation. Let's check out expedia.ca is at top of mind. And that's what we're helping our partners continue to do, like you said, Mike, across a multitude of screens.
So the changing landscape and the, we'll call it the ad tech space in terms of how it's growing is really maturing and evolving to a place where, it's not just a matter of being where your customers are now, because like you said, 5,000 ads a day, everybody's there. So what I love what you said about meaningful connections, and that's really kind of, do you see that as the future of ad tech, and a differentiator is not about, hey, I know Mike's on Instagram at this time, I'm going to serve him ads. It's deeper than that now, and we have to evolve and stay ahead of kind of where things are going. Is that where can you see the future of this ad tech space?
Yeah, we've gone from the one to many approach, one ad being surfaced to many, the Super Bowl ads, if you will, and more. We've reverted back to this need to have a direct conversation with consumers in that sense. Because again, 5,000 ads over the course of a day, you need to hit me with something that really speaks to me, or I'm going to continue to, scroll through my phone, or I'm not going to stop to pay attention to that. And as a result, a lot of the data that we've got access to and the work that our data analysts, scientists, and engineering departments work on at MIQ is helping identify those opportunities to have that meaning conversation. And it may mean something as being in the right spot, Mike. It could also mean something as the copy on your ad looking a little bit differently based on the way that you've got there or engaged with that brand specifically.
I draw so many parallels as you're talking about the evolution of that, and can't help but, like, obviously this is a show about recruiting, but it's similar, right? Where the one to many is like, we're hiring, let's like mass email a job description out there one to many, and eventually it just becomes the one of the same where they're all different. So now it's this change where you need to be different, and how do you be different, and how do you create that meaningful connection? So not that was planned, but a subtle plug for Spark. I appreciate that.
Pump Set Spike.
Yeah, we might have planned that. Might have planned that in the studio. In terms of, as you guys are growing and the space is growing and companies like yours are growing, what's been the challenge? What are the skill sets that are the most sought after for you to help fuel that growth in the labor market?
Yeah, it's been so interesting. I think the pandemic has completely flipped on its head the way that we've approached the labor market. Advertising, thankfully, was one of those industries that actually wasn't overly negatively impacted throughout the course of the pandemic. We actually saw budgets increase because more people were spending more time at home in front of screens, which was great for us. So we were having more engagement. But what happened as a result of that is, our people within our industry that used to be very isolated from other technology companies or other industries, they actually became highly sought after. So you saw organizations like Shopify or DoorDash begin to look towards the engineering departments that we have and say, there's this great wealth of talent inside of media. Why aren't we getting access to it? Why aren't we exposing ourselves to it? And as a result, those companies, they're amazing companies to work at. We saw a pretty significant portion of our labor staff, our labor force, move on to organizations like that. Good for them. We've had to go out and find new avenues. And I think, Mike, for us in particular, it's been focusing less on people who have the historic checkbox, like, hey, I've worked in media for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or I have graduated from X, Y, and Z. We're looking for analytical thinkers right now, regardless of the industry that they've executed. In fact, we find some of our best employees at MIQ aren't historically media folks. They are just inquisitive people who continue to push and challenge a lot of the status quo when it comes to the media market. And we're finding great success on that front. And, we want to continue to do that. But accessing that pool is quite hard because you don't know where you're pulling from. And you want to have that meaningful one-to-one connection as we were talking about.
Yeah, it seems like a trend, and I love the way you're attacking this from a creative hiring perspective, because the industry is changing so quickly. If you had experience in the media space for 5 years, even 5 years ago, it may not necessarily be relevant today, because who knows? And it's changing so quickly that almost someone that can adapt to change quicker and has the mindset and the analytical capabilities to do it, because it's very numbers driven and kind of data centric. And that's kind of why you veer there. Are you finding more of the growth coming in engineering? Is it in product? Is it sales? Is it kind of all the above, or are there any specific strains or growth areas?
Yeah, I think from that side, Mike, we're probably seeing the most opportunity inside of those analytics, engineering, resources, in particular. Product folks are in quite high demand. The other division of MIQ is trading, which is people who are hands on keyboard inside of platforms trading programmatic media campaigns. But there's always this need for the development of commercial talent on that front. So we're looking for people on our sales and account management team. One of the hardest roles that we've had a time finding is actually product marketing. So this hybrid mix of individuals who have great marketing experience, but also have the technical chops and capabilities to understand the the inner workings of our product suite, which is quite complex. So it's a little bit of that hybrid, and I think that's why we're, I wouldn't say we're having a difficult time finding the right talent in these roles, because we are very specific and particular. But it is an exciting journey to meet a lot of interesting folks as we're going through that process.
And in terms of from a retention standpoint, once you identify talent coming in, for you guys, how do you retain them? If you kind of mentioned there's a lot of people kind of grabbing at them as well when they're in, because once you get them that experience, it's really valuable to a bunch of different industries that they're trying to grab. So what's your approach, and how would you advise other kind of companies in a similar boat to retain those top talent?
Yeah, I think historically we used to rely a lot on the culture of the business in particular. I'm in the office today. It's not a full house. It is probably a fifth, maybe an eighth of what it used to be. And without having that, we've leaned on maintaining our culture in a different capacity. So some virtual stuff. We are doing a little bit more of the events in person. I think it comes down to having a very honest conversation with the people who work within your organization, listening to them, Mike, and then implementing some of those changes that they begin to ask for. So we find that when we onboard people, what happens is they are like super transparent with regards to their feedback, and this would make it a better company. And hearing those ideas and actually activating on them is something that I think like we as an organization are continuing to do and help with that. Those attrition challenges, they will continue to persist, absolutely, because our industry is in such high demand. I think if you're learning and if you're compensating people appropriately, those are two of the biggest things that you can probably do. The last that I think is the most is making them know that they are valued within that organization, and that can be in one of a multitude of ways. But our HR department, our people department, our DEI emphasis and focus, all of those kind of ladder up to some of those ways in which we're working to retain our talent.
And you mentioned kind of the I guess heightened competition for talent of that you guys are trying to attract, and obviously the ones you have as well. Has that recently become has there been a rise of competitors that have sought this after? Is this because of COVID? Was it always there and just kind of intensified because of the strains of the labor market? Or what are your thoughts on why that's happened, and do you see it kind of sustaining?
Yeah. Another great question. I think that fragmentation that I was alluding to earlier, that we as an organization, we're experts in connecting disparate data, different technologies, different sources of inventory, all that is great. But that fragmentation, as I alluded to, is getting more and more prevalent. And as a result of that, we're breeding more and more competitors. Media budgets are growing at these wild, multiples. Every year you're seeing increase over increase over increase. And the numbers that companies like Google, Amazon, and Facebook are doing are just continuing to grow. So as a result of that, people are interested in getting into the space. Organizations are, mostly coming over from the US and saying they've got an established business here, but they realize Canada is a significant market. So we're seeing that there is a significant rise specifically in Canada, as well as some of the great things that I'm extraordinarily, proud of as a Canadian. If you look at the talent coming out of the Kitchener-Waterloo area in particular with regards to engineering talent, companies realize that there's really good homegrown talent. You don't need long to go to Silicon Valley to start a tech company. You can start them right here in our own backyard. And great organizations like Shopify have been able to do that. So I think that that's also contributing to that rise.
Yeah, it seems like there's just a bit of a gap right now, but I think we'll catch up there. Is the students studying it now, it takes them a bit to get into the workforce, right? And there has been an emphasis, and I mean, even kids coming out of school now, they've been involved in technology their whole lives for the most part. So they're much more tech savvy than us coming out of St. Pete's would have been. So it's different. I mean, we had ICQ; they've got multi-platforms to be able to work with, right? So it's interesting seeing the evolution of the space, and I'm always fascinated to talk to you because the concept of advertising online started with Google, and then Facebook kind of changed the game. And now when you look at it, Like they're obviously probably the largest ones from a social media perspective, but now there's so many other ones. You got TikTok, you got Snapchat, you got all these other platforms kind of surfacing. It must make it exciting, but also a bit overwhelming to try to think of the right mix in terms of where you're going to be.
Yeah. That is the biggest challenge for brands and marketers. And I think we try to direct them through that process, Mike. Even sometimes when it's not like in a self-serving interest, like, hey, you should buy this from MIQ. In some instances, we're actually pushing them towards television or other channels specifically that we don't activate or execute in programmatically. It is daunting though. Like, Pepsi made the announcement yesterday that they have actually officially canceled the sponsorship of the halftime show that they've owned for the last 40 years because they're going to reinvest in platforms like YouTube and TikTok. So it's up to brands to identify where their consumers are actually spending that meaningful time and reinvest and double down on those platforms. And that's part of why, I love this job and I love what I do here is like helping brands navigate that conversation is just so vital. And I think that like it's going to continue to evolve with each player that comes into the market. That's a new and exciting challenge and something that I think that we're well positioned to take on.
Do you think the metrics are going to have to change a bit as we're talking, as in terms of like, before it was like, hey, we've reached X amount of people as like kind of like, great, you're doing a good job, where that's not necessarily an indicator for success anymore. It's more about conversions or the meaningful connections that we talked about in terms of, or else you'll spend all your money trying to reach everybody and not get anywhere. So are you seeing kind of the change of how marketing and brands have to evolve their thinking around metrics and how they measure success?
Like KPIs, key performance indicators, that we call them in the industry right now, Mike. You're absolutely right. Like reach is still something you need to hit an audience at least once, twice, three times to at least get in front of them. Like it's still there. But if you look at when I started, we used to work on things like a cost per click model. So you just wanted someone to click on your ad. And now if you think about it, like most marketers or consumers, sorry, are like, I can't remember the last time I actually clicked on an ad. So what we're looking at are different attribution models. We're looking at lifetime value of a consumer. So not only did they buy once, did they come back and buy multiple times? If it's Harry Rosen, are they buying a pair of socks? Are they buying a full suit and coming back next week and buying a sweater? So looking at metrics like that, most marketers are at a point where they have evolved what is, qualifies as a key performance indicator, a KPI to them. But because so much is still done offline, and by offline, I mean the good old fashioned way that I bought this shirt is you go into a store and you actually buy it versus ordering it on an Amazon. Connecting all those dots is still something that's extraordinarily challenging. And I think that as an organization and as an industry, we're trying to get better at it, but we're limited to the tools that we've got. And those are continuing to evolve, which is exciting for me. But attribution modeling is just something that every client talks about, and every client measures a little bit differently. And as a result of that, you've kind of got to be on your toes to make sure that you're aligned.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, we could talk all day about this stuff. It's really, really great. So I don't want to take up too much time, but as we're kind of wrapping things up, what excites you about the future of the industry in terms of where it's going, and specifically about how MIQ is situated for this excitement in terms of the future?
Yeah. So I'll answer it in two parts. I've talked a lot about the fragmentation piece, and I think that that's exciting because I think the more data that you've got access to, the more technology partners that you've got access to, the more inventory that you've got access to, like the more creative you can get in the approach and the way that you engage a consumer. I think that's the first one. The second one, Mike, is that we've moved to a point, and this tipping point, I would say that as an industry, every single ad impression of those 5,000 that you see a day is going to be biddable. Like everything that we've seen, every ad that you're exposed to, whether it's outside on your walk home or to work, whether it is at the gym, on a screen in front, everything will be biddable. And I think that just makes the market so exciting for me because the best, brightest marketers are going to be the ones at the forefront of engaging those people. And for me, it provides the next day and the day after and months and years down the road of excitement in my role, because it will not change. The job I have today will definitely not be the job I've got tomorrow.
I'm super excited for it. And I think you're starting to see it now where, data was a core competency for organizations because they were trying to wrap it up. Now it's content because like you said, now it's out. It's like, okay, now how can you get attention? Like, how can you be more creative in terms of really understanding and grabbing attention? And I think that rise we'll see is just, it's just like you said, the best of the best marketers are going to have their opportunity to shine through. And that's super exciting.
It is.
Jay, thanks a lot, man. I know it's Thursday afternoon. You're probably looking at logging off. It was super exciting to chat with you about this. Like I said, it's a fascinating field, and one that is growing from a headcount perspective and a growth perspective. So foreshadowing a future collab maybe in the future. But I just want to thank you for your time and all the insights.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for having me. Show's great. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to many more, bud.
Awesome.